think the automatic thing was confusing it. Save changes. There you go.
Ah, look.
There you are.
Look, that worked much better.
Yeah.
Apologies that I'm late. I'm still figuring this thing out. So, hey, busy week. We're starting the honey harvest, and yeah, that's keeping us busy. For sure. We've got quite a few hives with quite a few supers on them. I've got one with 7 supers on. Never had that before. But we had rain for the last 4 days, and we were out there putting the bee escapes on today, and the supers felt a little light. So I think the bees might have been eating my honey, which doesn't excite me. If I'd been prescient, I would have pulled them before this rainstorm. But I learn a little bit every year. Uh, Next year, I think what I'm going to do is pull them incrementally and take them to the new facility and extract, and then put them back on. I couldn't do that before because we didn't have any place to do it. So now that I do, next year it'll work better. But we'll see what we get. So we are deep into our honey harvest, where we put the bee escapes on today. That's a device we put on between the supers and the brood box that allows the forager bees to exit the brood box or exit the honey supers and get down to the brood box but not come back up. Put it on the day before we take the honey. That way when we take the supers, there's no bees in there. You can do that process with the bee escape, or you can do it chemically. I prefer the bee escape. Just I don't like chemicals. We will still take some fume boards with us just in case, for whatever reason, the bees got back into some of the honey supers, and we'll have to get them out. Fume boards, by the way, are literally a board you put on top that you put some smelly stuff on, and as soon as you put it on there and leave it on for like a minute, the bees hate it and they run away from it, and it's a way to empty out the supers. I just don't like it. So we, so what we do is we do that. We'll take the honey tomorrow, load it up, bring it back up here to the shop, roll it into our processing room, and then dry it out for over the weekend, and then harvest it on Monday. We dry our honey for 2 or 3 days just because not all of it is capped. We've got some nectar in there, and going through and figure out which ones are capped, fully capped, and which ones have nectar. It's just not great. Just not a great plan. So we just take it all and then we dry the nectar out, and it works just fine. And when it blends all in. Stuart, you're asking when does the nectar flow typically end in North Carolina? About a week from now is when it should end, but it's over. So it is what it is, and I think I misjudged it by about 4 days. I should have took it about 4 days ago. We'll find out on Monday when we harvest, but I'm not real happy about it. Very excited to have the facility this year. We've got the option of rolling the supers in on pallet jacks instead of carrying everything by hand. We're going to be able to do it during the day, which I think is phenomenal. Those of you who watched my videos or been around for a minute, you've seen before we were doing it in a trailer, and you had to do it at night because what I learned the first year is if you do it during the day, the bees show up and they want their honey back. It was not my finest moment. The so, and even in the trailer when we did it at night, at dawn, the bees started showing back up, and they wanted the leftovers. So we couldn't let anything settle or let everything fully drain, and that cost us honey. So this year's going to be that's going to be super handy. Being awake during the day and be able to do it during the day. So we'll pull the honey, run it through our clarifier, and then let it sit in the settling tank, and that's going to be real nice. That eliminates a lot of filtering because we can let it sit there for a couple days, and any wax we didn't get out in the clarifying tank will float, and we can just skim that off. So super excited about that. It'll be, and if it's raining, I don't got to worry about all that. That's you don't think about stuff like that until you've had to harvest it at night in a trailer. I had a question of why do we dry the hives out before harvesting? So we want the honey to be below 17% and moisture content. We I think I mentioned it. We don't check every single frame we pull. We just pull the whole super, and the yeah, and some of them still got nectar in it that hasn't been fully capped, and so we dry it out. If you don't, if the moisture content's too high, it'll ferment, and that's not what you want. So, some good videos of people who have made that mistake, and I don't want to be one of them. How do we keep our honey warm enough while harvesting that doesn't get thick? Well, the room where we'll process that and where the hives will be drying at will be at about 84 degrees. And we'll keep it right there while it's drying. And that's where we'll also keep the room while we're extracting. We do that so that the honey moves. It comes out of the extractor better. We don't want it more than that though. The frames start, the wax, the honeycomb starts to come out more when we get it higher than that. So it's kind of a 84 to 90 degrees, no more. It does make for a hot day in that room, but it's you got to keep the honey flowing. All right, how much should you filter your honey, and how do we best do that? Well, there's a couple ways. You can put a strainer on top of a honey bucket and just let your honey flow out of your extractor through the strainer into your honey bucket. I did that first couple years, but once you get more than about 20-25 hives, it's just not practical. So what we do now is it comes out of the extractor and goes into a clarifier. Clarifier is it's got 3 baffles inside it, and so it dumps into the first one. All the junk floats to the top, and the clean honey goes up and through the first baffle, and in the second one the same thing happens, and it gets in the third baffle. And when the third one is full, we pump it out into the clarifying tank through some cheesecloth, and then let it settle. So you want it filtered, but not over filtered. I thought about putting an inline filter in this facility this year, and I might do that next year. But I just, what I'm doing is working, so I'm probably not going to do anything else to it. We'll see. I'm always tinkering with it in the off season though, so we'll see. What if you have bee parts in your honey after filtering? Do you dig them out? Just let it float. Just let it settle. They'll float. You can dig them out. You can then skim them off. It's not a big deal. Oh, hey, one big thing I'm super excited about, and we'll do a video on it. I finally broke down and bought a Lyson honey extruder this year. Or, I mean, a wax extruder this year. So when you uncap our honey, you shave the cappings off. And then there's those wax cappings. They've got a lot of honey left in them. And, years past, we just squeezed it out and or let it drain and did the best we could do. But now I've got a wax extruder, so we'll dump the wax cappings into the extruder, and an Archimedes screw will squeeze the rest of the remaining honey out and then spit out nice dry wax. That was an expensive piece of machinery, but I'm going to get clean wax and I'm going to get all that honey out of it. So it's going to pay off. It'll take a few years for that to pay off, but I'm really excited about it. I think it's just going to be fun to watch the honey come out without me having to squeeze it. And then what we're going to do this year that we didn't do in years past is we're going to put those honey supers back on just in case there's some flow left. And on one of my sites last year, the bees brought in some purple honey, and I didn't have supers on, and they put it in the brood box. So this year, those are definitely getting supers. Maybe I'll get some purple honey out of it. Got a question on any updates on my honey for local colleges. Well, USDA canceled all of the local food for school stuff, so K through 12 is, it is what it is. But, when God closes one door, he opens another one, and I'm working through becoming a vendor for a number of the universities here in North Carolina. We're going to start, believe it or not, with UNC Wilmington. So I planned to start with like Fayetteville State right down my back door, but UNC Wilmington wants to be first, so I'll let them. We'll see. I had thought of universities as a market for honey, but it turns out that they do have a market. They've got a really high bar to get into them as a vendor in terms of insurance and paperwork. But if you can once you get through that, though, I'm hoping it's going to be a good deal for me. It'd be like adding more grocery stores. So uh, that could be a real blessing for us, later on, and replace some of the revenue we lost from some of the government sales. Uh, that goes to a good question. Have you ever felt like giving up? What did you do to overcome the frustrations of beekeeping? What keeps you going? Oh my gosh, the number of times I have just gone, what am I doing? Uh, yeah, you just like today when we were out there and I figured out that I think I lost some money to the bees eating it because I didn't pull it 4 days earlier. Man, that's going to take what was going to be a great harvest and turn it into a decent harvest. But just it's the call of the farmer, right? Next year will be a perfect harvest. So I just got to keep going. It helps that you we're running the farm debt free. I think that's been key. I don't have a big mortgage payment hanging over my head or a big equipment payment hanging over my head or a lot or debt. So when stuff happens, we're gonna be okay. The family's gonna get fed. It's gonna be okay. The business may suffer, but we'll keep going. And I'm learning something. The other thing that's keeping me going, to be honest, is, and I didn't think this would happen. I didn't set out with this goal, but it's really becoming important to me. Uh, I get a lot of veterans out here that are training with me. We had 2 out here today helping with the harvest. We'll have 3 or 4 on Monday. And the second one is I'm bringing FFA students in through a workforce development program to work during the summer. I really enjoy teaching them. I like seeing them learn. I like watching the other veterans learn the things I've learned and avoid my mistakes, and that keeps me going quite a bit. To be honest, you can make a lot of mistakes. You can make a lot of mistakes together with fellow veterans that are around you, and we all just laugh at each other and move on. That's good for me. It's good for my soul. How many times a year do we harvest, and is it ever and which one's better? So the spring harvest is always better. We harvest spring and fall. Spring harvest is always better. It's always more plentiful. We do harvest again in the fall, late September. We'll pick up all that summer honey. I'm hoping to make it a little bit better this year by putting those supers back on right away. I haven't done that before, so kind of gonna see what happens. The fall honey though, I like it because it's darker. The wildflowers and everything else that grows around here, around the river and in the swamp behind me, makes some really good dark honey. And maybe I'll get some purple honey this year. That would be great. That would make up for a lot of things because that stuff sells for a lot. Let's see. Best practices. Anything else you can advise on to ensure bees go strong until the fall harvest? Summer mite treatment. That's the big one. The mite population right now is approaching its zenith in your hives. Meanwhile, there's nothing really. Well, there's a new product that I'm going to use this year that's you can put on with the honey seepers on, but until this year, you haven't been able to treat with anything because it's just too hot here. Everything we've got hurts the bees in the summer. But there's a new product that's been FDA approved for use even while the honey seepers are on. It's called Viroxan, and it's an oxalic acid strip for long duration oxalic treatments. I bought enough to do all my hives this year. It's the first year it's been available, and I really like oxalic acid. It's natural. It works. The mites can't develop a immunity to it because you're really just melting their little shells. And we can put it on there in summer. So if I were going to recommend one thing to do for beekeepers after they harvest to get them through the summer, do your mite treatments. That stuff works well. Hey Marge, thanks for joining. Appreciate you. That's key. If you can get your mite load down and get your hives healthy through summer so that they're fat, happy bees, and they bring in a decent harvest, and then you feed them again heavily in the winter after you've harvested, they're going to come into summer really well. And by the way, this is also the time that you need to be splitting your bees. Ideally, you split some before the flow, which we did, Now, as soon as the flow is over, we're going to pull probably another 6 or 8 splits out of the production hives, maybe. Uh, and then we've got our nuke yard. We've got 12 nukes out there. We'll pull a few splits out of them as well. I want to go into the winter with 15 nukes that will get deployed next year into to replace winter losses or grow it. That's my goal pretty much every year. To do that, we got to be splitting. So you need to be thinking through that. If you're going to split, you got to feed. Just feed and feed and feed and feed because the splits don't have any forager bees. So you got to give the nurse bee something to feed that new queen so she can lay and have larvae. Uh, and if all of those nukes are fat, uh, they don't rob each other in the dirt during the summer.
Do you do bee feed for the splits? Our bee feed or just sugar water?
Yeah, Christy's asking if we use sugar water or our bee feed. This year we'll use our bee feed. It's a good product. It doesn't ferment. So, but in the past I've used sugar water and that works really well. Light sugar water in the summer, like almost, well, at least 1 to 1, almost 2 parts water, 1 part sugar. So really light because it gets the queen laying a lot. That's good for those nukes. Yeah.
Question 10. You skipped it.
The after we've harvested our honey, how do you store it? We store it in 5-gallon buckets, food grade 5-gallon buckets. Someday maybe I'll move to 55-gallon drums, but right now we're just using 5-gallon buckets. They're easy to move. 55-gallon drums are more efficient, but they're hard to move. And turns out I'm getting older every day. So I prefer 5-gallon buckets so that I can pick up and move around easier without having to mess around with the forklift. So it's probably what we're going to stick with. And the food grade ones are fine. And it's always nice to have buckets around after you've used them too. Stuart, any nuggets of wisdom that I want to share since last month? I don't have a lot of wisdom, to be honest.
Facts.
So sharing wouldn't take long. I will tell you, if you're running a farm, if you're running an apiary, if you're running a small business for that matter, you heard me say I bring veterans and students in. There's a program that's a federal program that's in every state called the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. And it's a workforce development program. And one of the things it has is a component for training youth. So I find FFA students that want to come work at my farm and get them screened for the program. And if they're accepted into the program, then this program pays for them to come work for 480 hours, $15 an hour. And I'm not paying them; the state is, and that's a really good deal. It's super rewarding for a small business owner to be able to bring a young person in and train them and watch them work and watch them grow. But I'm not going to lie, the extra set of hands is really nice too in a farm. Same thing with veterans. I've got one veteran here working right now, retired first sergeant, who's also on that program because recently separated veterans typically qualify as well. So if you're an apiary owner, a business owner, and you want to have a heart for training people, but you also need some help, that's a great way to do it. Get them for 480 hours at a time. Use it. I'm finding a lot of agricultural producers aren't aware of the program. So if you have any questions about that, reach out to me. I'll shoot you the whole brief on it. All right. So in my closing here, so if I don't have anything else, the other projects that are coming up after the harvest, in the month of June, maybe into July, we got to pour some concrete behind my new facility and build an overhang for equipment storage on the back. We've got to get around to painting some shipping containers that I've been using and moving them down there by the facility, putting a roof on them so for the long haul. And we're going to finally install the walk-in coolers that I acquired 9 months ago and haven't deployed yet. So June, July, it's gonna be busy times. That's when we get everything else done. It's so hot. The bees, there's not that much to do on the bees, so we get to take care of everything else. So maybe on the next one, I'll show you some pictures of what we've gotten done.
Question 11. If that's no.
So,
And 13.
got a question on will bees swarm after you take their spring honey? Maybe. Sometimes if they're crowded. But typically the bees don't want to swarm once the spring flow is over. That's typically the end of swarm season once it starts getting hot. So we should be just about at the end of it. We didn't have a ton of swarms this year, and we didn't catch a ton of swarms. A lot of other folks did, but I'm happy not to have a lot of swarms, because that means I kept my bees. And those that did swarm looked like, I had to either they requeen, and if they didn't requeen, I took a nuke and put them on top of it, and so it requeened itself. And they'll be good, healthy hives come for the fall. Okay, any other questions from the viewers before I round out here? Again, it's going to be a busy couple days. We'll post some videos on the Facebook of the new equipment I've got and how the new stuff is, the setup is working. And we'll let you know how the harvest went. So, appreciate y'all, and thanks for tuning in. See you next month.